Okay, so moving along, we're moving into our Middle Byzantine art from 843 to 1204. And during this time period, Greece was part of the Byzantine Empire. And what I'm showing you here is one of the famous churches in Greece, or monasteries in Greece. And this has 5 square units, each with a dome on it, and each then with pedientos on it. So you can see the one dome up here, and it's quite beautiful. This Byzantine art gets very elaborate in its style, and the rich use of marble that we see here and throughout these churches. But really, in the middle period, probably the most famous of these cathedrals or churches or monasteries is this. It's St. Mark in Venice. And what happened is, during this time period, Venice was situated in a way where many travelers coming from Asia into Europe crossed over through Venice. It was one of the main waterways where people would go. And so Venice became a city that became extremely wealthy. And so because of this, they were able to build this quite magnificent cathedral I'll be showing you in just a second, that was begun in 1063. Interestingly, if you remember back at the beginning of this week's videos, I was showing you Hagia Sophia. And Hagia Sophia had accumulated a lot of relics in it. But what happened is, during the Crusades, the Crusaders from the West, they needed money to fund their crusades. So they went to Venice, because Venice is very wealthy, and they asked the Venetians to borrow money. And the Venetians lent them money, but then to pay the Venetians back, they actually went into Hagia Sophia and they ransacked all the relics and stole lots and lots of relics, and then they brought them back and they gave them to the Venetians as payment. And the Venetians placed some of them in the Cathedral of St. Mark, and then others were sold throughout Europe. So it's an interesting thing that that's how a lot of the relics in Europe end up in Europe. And when I say a relic, it's literally something that's related usually to a saint. It could be the arm bone of the saint, or a piece of clothing that he supposedly wore, something like this. So here's the interior of St. Mark, and it's an amazing cathedral. It's everything you see that looks gold is real gold. And so you can see how, wealthy the Venetians were at this time period, that they were able to create this amazing cathedral. And you can see the multiple domes. Here's one here, multiple domes that are in this cathedral. This brings us to what is known as the late Byzantine art, 1261 to 1453. And here I'm showing you an image, actually put it like over here. I'm showing you an image that is, if you look at it, one of the orientation or the perspective of it is kind of interesting, because as you look at it, you see that you'll have to walk around to really see the whole ceiling in some kind of perspective, looking up at it. And the buildings are pretty wonky the way they are showing their perspective. It really doesn't make any sense. But the figures I want you to focus on are these down here, this grouping of figures. And this is supposed to be Mary and her parents. And so when the viewer is looking at these 3 people, they're supposed to look at them as being very much like themselves, whatever role they're going to take as mother, father, child, whatever it might be, and have this kind of personal connection to the three of them because they are shown this way. No halos or anything, just very kind of like approachable in the way that they're depicted, and so that you can personalize this kind of intimate moment between the child and the parents and have a personal connection to Mary. We also have the return of frescoes, so in the late Byzantine. And so here I'm showing you a fresco. And this is an interesting dilemma, that if you know, the Old Testament is really the Hebrew Bible, and the New Testament is the life of Jesus. Okay, so we have a lot of people from the Hebrew Bible that are revered within the Catholic Church. Say, for instance, like Moses, right? Now, what happens, because Moses is before Jesus, and supposedly you're not really ending up in heaven unless you believe in Jesus. So how can this conundrum be solved? Well, here we have Jesus literally going down into hell and taking out people that are dead, that are from the Old Testament, like Moses, for example, and bringing them up into heaven then. So this is an explanation of how Jesus is saving these people from the Old Testament or from the Hebrew Bible. So it's an interesting way to explain this. And this is my last piece I'm showing you, and it shows the wide range of art within the Byzantine, and also just the wide range of geographical location here, because this is coming to us from Moscow. So we have this wide section of the world that ends up being controlled by the Byzantine. And here we have the three angels visiting Abraham. And again, this is an Old Testament idea, right? But we're saying it's related to the Trinity. And the Trinity meaning Jesus, and then the Holy Spirit and God. So the idea of Jesus again in the Old Testament. Now, when you look at this table looks like it's flipping up. This is very flattened. We have these chairs. They don't make sense. Look at this. If this was true perspective, the line should go back like this. This leg should be shorter. But yet, in essence, the way it's drawn or painted here, this leg is actually longer than this leg. That doesn't make any sense. We also have these, sometimes students have said they look like the back of the chairs. Now, these are supposed to be the wings of the angels here. So they're kind of weird the way they're drawn and attached to the body. The faces are so tiny in comparison to the body. The proportions are really, really strange. But the way that this is actually painted is really beautiful. And this is another technique of painting that we haven't seen yet. Tempera on panel, on wood panel. And we'll see this more and more as we move forward. This is when you're taking egg yolk, take by the sac of the egg, you puncture the sac, you squeeze out the yellow of the yolk of the egg, you mix it with water and pigment, and then you literally paint with it, and the egg is your binder, and you paint on wood. But it's very hard to control, and so we see this kind of layering of the color so that it has this kind of iridescent quality to it, where, you know, as it folds, it changes color here. It's really beautifully done and very hard to achieve something like this. So this is the Byzantine, and so next we're going to move into the Islamic art, because this is what happens then to the Byzantine world. It's finally ended when the Ottoman Turks come into Constantinople and take over Constantinople and change it to present-day Istanbul.